Okay, this is part 2 of quotes about power from Holy Grail of Wisdom quotes by Meet Pete Rogers. This one's by Howard Nemerov. He's a poet. He said, "The Constitutional Republic of America is a historic aberration. Any honest student of history will note that the prevailing socioeconomic system is feudalism, where a tiny minority control the vast majority of wealth, power, and resources. In so doing, they have absolute control over 99% of the population. Power equals control." And that's been my experience, is that the average pro doesn't know anything. What they think is correct is the opposite of the truth. And that's why they're so fragile and weak, because they think the opposite of the truth is correct. For example, all you have to do is go to the grocery store and you will see 95% of the toothpaste still has fluoride in it. It's been known for a long time that fluoride is a rat poison, and you don't ever want that in your body. Okay, then you go to the dentist, and most dentists will still tell you that fluoride's okay. So these are guys that have a doctorate degree, and they still don't even, and all they study is the mouth, and they don't even know the mouth. And I can tell you that things they put in people's mouths, the amalgams, the root canal procedure, those procedures are a joke. They're a disaster. So that's what I'm trying to say is the world right now is kind of upside down. And I don't see hope of it getting better anytime fast, because the vast majority of the public, thinks 2 plus 2 is 5. Okay? So all I can say is, the best hope you have is realize that you're on your own. There is no system to help you. Don't get me wrong. The system, so to speak, like conventional medicine, it's good at some things if you know how to pick what it's good at. It's good at treating acute disease. It's good at some surgeries, okay? It's good at a few other things. But this idea that it's, uniformly competent and knows what it's doing, especially for chronic stuff, no way. All right, well, anyways, that's my point. Most systems run on something like feudalism, serfdom, or slavery. And the big push, what power wants in the world right now, real power, it wants slavery, okay? So hopefully that won't happen. Okay, Mary Pride, author of The Way Home, she said, "Just look at the shattered lives of millions of schooled yet uneducated Americans. Each new crisis brings the experts out in swarms, recommending solutions that bring them more power and prestige, though they are the very people who caused the crisis in the first place." Yeah, the whole public school system is just a joke. They use the look-say method of teaching, which makes kids dyslexic. Kids are eating all this processed food, non-organic food with the glyphosate. Those are 2 of the major contributors to causing autism. Okay? And so also attention deficit and EMF contributes to all that as well. Major contributor, okay? So what I'm trying to say is the public schools make the kids stupid. Then they say the kids are stupid, we need more testing, and the testing makes them stupider. It's been well known for a long time. All you got to do is put a bunch of books in the middle of the room, tell the kids read whatever you want, and the test scores go way up through the roof. Okay? You give them a little freedom to choose their own book, and they will want to read. Because reading is intrinsically pleasurable if you can pick your own book. And you teach them with phonics, and they learn. Okay, next quote. "The tyrant binds his followers to him by making them accomplices in his crimes. The tyrant confuses those he can't convince. He corrupts those he can't confuse, and he crushes those he can't corrupt." To promote the illusion of liberty, the tyrant may tolerate some opposition as long as it is ineffective. Okay, here's Plato. When a tyrant first appears, he says that he is a protector. Yeah, like Cromwell. Okay, there's an asshole for you. Alan Bloom, "The most successful tyranny is not the one that uses force to assure uniformity, but the one that removes the awareness of other possibilities." Like John Taylor Gatto had said, the public is so ignorant and clueless, it thinks that public school is the only way that school could be. No, public school is the worst version of a school you could have. The one-room schoolhouse was much better. The Catholic schools are much better. Homeschooling's by far better. Okay, Eric Hoffer. "The totalitarian brand of tyranny has perfected an awesome technique for stripping the individual of all material and spiritual resources which might bolster his independence and self-respect. It deprives him of every alternative and refuge, even that of silence or retreat into solitariness." Yeah, one of the things public schools do is they get rid of religion. They make the kids, disrespect their parents, their values, their traditions, their religion, because all of that weakens a person. Having a religion and tradition makes you stronger. That's why they don't want you to have it. Knowing the true history of America, how great it is, makes people stronger. That's why they don't want them to know the true history. Okay. All right, let me scroll a little bit here, get this next comment in place. To usurp supreme and absolute authority in a free society and subject it to tyranny, the people must already have become corrupt by gradual steps from generation to generation. Right, it's sort of shifting the Overton window to make them think more and more things that are not reasonable are reasonable, and they just become bigger and bigger chumps. Can you imagine people accepting aluminum in your tap water? Major neurotoxin that forms complexes with fluoride, rat poison to facilitate the entry of aluminum into the brain. Who would approve that? Okay? All right. So anyways, Alexander Lowen, he says, when a person sacrifices his right to self-expression, in other words, self-realization, for the sake of survival, his very survival is endangered, not from without, but from within. With the surrender of the right to self-expression, the meaning of life is lost. In other words, if you can never say what you want, then it takes the fun out of conversation, doesn't it? Okay, continuing with Alexander Lowen. This is not a psychological phenomenon only. Self-expression is the direct and immediate manifestation of the life force in an individual. Self-expression is the equivalent to life expression, and a life that isn't expressed isn't being lived. That leads to a slow death. The shell eventually becomes a tomb. The situation is tragic. To break out of the shell is to risk death, but to stay in the shell, which is a living death, threatens one also with the actual death more inevitable but slower. Yeah, so basically, if you can never say what you want, you don't got much of a life. And I told you, I know people who grew up in communist countries, communist Eastern Europe and communist Russia. And they'll tell me things like, you walk in that classroom, you have to salute Lenin, and you have to lie all day long. Every day you have to lie all day long just to survive. You're forced to lie all day long. Okay, it's political correctness there. Okay, here's Ronald Reagan. He said, evil is powerless if the good are unafraid. If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under. Yeah, Ronald Reagan was a great president. I mean, he's as good as you could do for the 1980s. And he knew communism, and basically, atheism is communism, okay? You look at atheism, and you'll see it is the foundation of communism, because it denies human rights. It says that you're nothing but atheistic Darwinism, a talking monkey. And once you accept that you're a talking monkey, that means you have no rights. None, zero. So that's why, I talk to some people, and they think they're clever, saying, oh, atheism is the truth. And I'm like, do you even understand what you're saying? To say that you think atheism is the proper understanding of the world is to say that you have no meaning in your life, you have no value, you don't deserve anything. And that, the ruler, if they want, anytime they want, they should be able to take your daughter into their bed, that they should be able to do whatever they want with you. They can grind you up and use you for fertilizer. That's what you're saying if you think atheism is okay. It means that your life is meaningless and you have no rights, you're like an ant. Okay, and if you believe that, good for you, but I think it's not based on science, and I think it's not in your best interest, that's for sure. Okay, next quote, Thomas Powers. The first rule of keeping secrets is nothing on paper. Okay, power consists, this is now David McMichael, power consists of being able to require others to accept your reality. The politically strong totally reject what you have to say if it conflicts with their official view of reality. The essence of power for these people is that they control the vision of reality. When you put forward an alternative to what they say, they get very angry because you're breaking their monopoly. Okay, well, they're pretty good at controlling things. They're great at it. They're so fucking smart. Mikhail Bakunin, he says, political power and wealth are inseparable. Those who have power have the means to gain wealth and must center all of their efforts on acquiring it, for without it, they will not be able to retain their power. Those who are wealthy must become strong, for lacking power, they run the risk of being deprived of their wealth. Okay, what causes war? This is General Douglas MacArthur. He said, undefended wealth. Yep. The typical scenario is somebody gets power, and then they say who's around them that they could steal stuff from. And if whoever's around them is so weak that they can easily take it, then they take it. Martin Buber, power abdicates only under stress of counterpower. Okay, Henry Clay. The arts of power and its minions are the same in all countries and all ages. It marks its victim, denounces him, excites the public odium and public hatred to conceal its own abuses and encroachments. And the other thing is you can't help stupid people because they don't learn and they don't want to learn. They won't read anything. They won't think. They just want to be told what to do. I see this because I'm not going to get into right now, but I've seen this situation play out repeatedly. Stupid person says, "Can I have help?" And then you explain to them what to do. Like, "Oh, I can't do that." And you're like, "Well, then, I can't help you." And the net result, most of the time when the person's stupid, you can't help them because they don't want to listen or learn. They don't want. You can't push a person up a ladder. They have to say, "Oh, here's a ladder, thank you," and climb it themselves. But they have to do some of the work to get better, from any of this stuff. You got to learn a little bit. It's not complicated, but you do. John Kenneth Galbraith, perhaps the oldest and certainly the wisest strategy for the exercise of power is to deny that it is possessed. Malcolm X, power never takes a back step, only in the face of more power. Jacques Ellul, propaganda tries first of all to create conditioned reflexes in the individual so that certain words, signs, or symbols, even certain persons or facts, provoke unfailing reactions. The important thing is that when the time is right, the individual can be thrown into action by the utilization of the psychological levers that have been set up. Okay, here's an anonymous quote. Public schools use brainwashing and propaganda to control the minds of students, to weaken them, to teach them to depend on external validation, to train them to measure their own worth based on the opinions of others. Yeah, the so-called experts of the system. Anyways, that was just a couple quotes on power. Hope you found that helpful.